there are times that the deformer do not allow you to have that perfect shape. Now it's very convenient. It does a sort of like an area of effect to distort the image into the sort of shape and form that you want. However, does not have that perfect refined micro management that you may need, especially for the face. It happens a lot in my own projects is that when I do the face with the deformer, when I have to make the character face left or right, and when the character turns to face, that the end destination with the deformer, it does not allow me to make that perfect curve that I want for the cheeks and the mouth area. And that is when you use a method where you combine the effect of a deformer shaping plus a polygon shaping. All right, so what it means is that here's what I'm going to do. So from the last episode, we made the square turn into these lines that we want it to be. However, we find that the end of it, this end, to both ends actually, it's sort of blurry, and that is because how the mechanic works, and it sort of stretches the edge of it, and that's why it does not have that sharp edge that we need for or inherited from the original square. Now what do we do next? What we can do is give the square a little bit more polygons than this. Let me look at it again. This is the current square, and we will also give the square the same parameter key points. So the deformer has angle x at -30, 0, and 30, and then we will have flex square also have a point at -30, 30, and 0. However, we will need more polygons than just 4 of these, or else we cannot refine the edges. So let's get into the square, and let's take a look. And the problem is that the edge right here and here, when you squish the shape, it sort of blurs out, because you sort of, when you squish vertically, it means you stretch horizontally, same thing. So what we need is that we need to protect those area. So here what we can do, we will first draw out the area that needs protection, and then we will have a systematic arrangement of a pattern, an ideal pattern for the polygons. Now this zigzag sort of method is my usual one, is the safest one to go every time when I don't know for sure if there's a better way to do things. I will go with this, because sometimes there are different patterns that will work better in certain case. However, in our case, I don't know at this point what I want, so I will do that. And in the middle it doesn't really matter, but well, I guess we should practice a little bit more in making that pattern, so we'll also do the same. So let's say this is a whole new project, and this is a whole new texture that I'm trying to import. Now I don't know how I want to work with this yet. I don't even have a plan of how I'm going to distort it, but then I will make a generally applicable pattern. And as long as I keep in this pattern, or I can do it horizontal, because currently it's sort of like vertical, but if I do a horizontal line and do that one too, that's okay. The reason why I'm doing vertical is because I want to protect the area of this side and this side, so vertical would make more sense than horizontal. So let's continue doing that. Zigzag. And I don't know if I mentioned in my previous episode that whenever you have a pretty nice structure overall wireframe, even though it's not, even though the dots are limited and you want to add more dots for your need, but once you have the somewhat a organized outer frame, when you divide the polygon into 4, it sort of keeps the same pattern and extend from there, and so that's pretty handy right here. So these are about, I don't need that many. Not in this case, so I'm going to backspace, Ctrl Z, and I'm going to stick with this one because I don't need that. In fact, 6 point is kind of a lot, but let's go with it for now. So I got this square, and even though I haven't done anything but setting up the empty perimeter key points, it will still move ahead to where it should go, because obviously the deformer is already doing that, not this one. So you don't need to double move it. You don't need to go here and move the square because the deformer is doing that movement. However, what I need from this part is that I need the square to protect the edge. So what I'm gonna do, there's several ways to do this. What ultimately I want to do is I want to put everything in a certain proportion, in the same ratio of distance, and it will end up with a much sharper edge than now. However, moving them manually, individually, it's really like your hand is shaky, you're using a mouse, so it's not very effective. So let's explore around what kind of tools that we have for moving a group of these polygon dots. The first one we'll go with is the lasso tool. It's almost the same as, you know, other drawing software. The lasso tool, you sort of draw the area, and it will select everything, all the dots available in this area. That includes all the other layers. So currently we only have the black square, but if we have a triangle and circle at the back that is not locked, then this thing will select everything within. So that's why sometimes you want a good practice is that you want to only unlock the thing that you're working with when you use this tool. Alright, so now I've locked all the layers, and within the rough group I've only have the black square. It doesn't move the deformer, it only moves the texture dots. That is one way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first squish them. Now I'm moving horizontally without affecting the vertical distance. That's because I'm holding down Control and Shift at the same time. Shift sort of locks the horizontal line, and I'm shifting inwards so I can protect the texture a little bit more. Now since this distance has been, like, the distance between this line of dot and this line of dot is shorter, the distortion, the stretching is much less now. But it's sort of not in the right shape. So after that, we can move the dots individually, and by doing this practice more enough, then you will get used to being sensitive to these dots, because it's a particular kind of senses that you have, the sense that you have to develop over time. At first you won't get used to moving this around. It feels like whenever you're trying to move one dot to fix the previous point, you're also moving the other point and makes things worse. But after a few tries, you would start to get a sense of it, and you would know how to move it. So it's not only just in and out. You can also move up and down to balance things in order to make it to protect the shape of it. By the way, we have zoomed in by 1600%, so this is quite enlargement happening right here. So if it doesn't look nice here, doesn't mean it's terrible out there. Like if you zoom out back to 100%, it actually looks pretty decent already. But let's see what else, how much we can do. Let's do a little bit more than this. So once you got, I think I can move this a little bit more. Yep. Approximately. Doesn't have to be perfect, I guess. You see, in Live2D, we work with what do I say, non-vector textures, and it's never perfect. Like if you zoom in big enough, nothing is perfect in this Live2D world. So don't worry about the absolute perfect of it. Like your job as an animator, you feel obligated to retain the best quality of the work of this original character artist. However, there's only so much you can do, so you gotta draw a line where you stop, and then you gotta move on with it. So I say this is okay. I'm gonna move down a little bit. Oh, actually, I don't wanna move the square, original square positioning with the texture. If I wanna move it, I wanna move it with deformer. Alright, so I'm moving a deformer. Now this time I need to extend this part a little bit to match the original length that I want. However, if I do the stretching now again, it's just going to give another blurry line. Not too obvious in this case, but if you stretch enough, it will show up. So you can either stretch here, or you can select the texture and stretch from here by selecting all these dots to get two lines of dots together and move them. And let's check the animation. So we got from here slowly down here. What the observer don't notice is that as it does this, it doesn't just squish downwards. What it actually does is sort of this side is moving inwards and both sides are moving outwards in order to match that perfect shape. This is a solid black square, so we don't see distortion between this part and this part, because these things in the middle are also getting stretched too. As you move these out, this part is getting stretched. But we'll talk about that later, and it is a critical problem later on when you move with, I don't know, hair probably? Hair and anything sort of a ribbon kind of movement that this would call a major problem, but we'll talk about it later. So on the other side, we can do the same with another tool. How come I don't see the reference image? Oh, there it is. So it's more or less beyond the original link that I need. So I guess I can just move inwards, that'd be fine. But instead of using this tool, let's try this tool. Well, this is the soft selection tool. What it does is that you can control the size of it, and it works like a spray, sort of like a spray brush. And as you hold down left click, it will have a spray effect on the dots. So as you can see, when I'm holding down here, the dots over here are lighter red than the ones at the center. That's because currently you're selecting more strength on this and less strength on this. And when you move things, you will see that the ones at the back are not moving so much, and the ones all full red in the middle are moving almost like you're dragging all of that solidly, like full strength, like with this one. All right, and this is for sort of like a softer transition, and you would use this a lot on the face, on the bust, on the what else, hair maybe, but we'll get used to this later on. And the way of changing size is that you want to hold down tab, the tab button, right? Is it tab or cap lock? It's tab, right? Hold down tab and left click, and when you slide the mouse, you would change the shape of it. But we won't be using too much of this tool in this episode, because in this case, it doesn't. It's not what we want. We want solid things. We want solid reshaping and not the soft one. So the soft selection tool wouldn't make sense. The other one is the deformed path. Now it's pretty. Actually, I'll talk about this in the next episode, because that's not for selecting. So I guess we have learned that we can deform with manually moving these dots. We can also deform by using the deformer, the parent deformer, or we can use the hard select lasso tool or the soft selection tool. Also, you can individually select or multiple points at a time, because now I'm holding down Control and select, and I'm left clicking on these dots that I want. And let's say I just want to move these particular 5 dots. You see what happens? So they sort of group them up into this red square, and this center moving thing, and the moving holder sort of moves all those points together. And that is how you use Control Shift click for multiple points. So I guess I can Control Shift click all these, and let's push them inwards while holding down Control to make it sharp again. We are at 3200%, and this is probably as much I can zoom as possible. So I'm going to shape this up a little bit, make it look like a straight line again. And that's good. Not my best, but I'll go with it. like that. Okay, now the last part is that we have to move it outwards again in order to match that perfect length that we want. So there you go. This to this. And this time, now we have the perfect length. We also have a sharp edge to look at. Now obviously we need to do this part as well, so I'm going to quickly do it. Or else you can jump into working it yourself, because the rest of it is just going to be the same, more or less. Inwards. And whoa, a lot of growing some teeth right there. Now you can check my my key pressings over here. You can see exactly what keys I'm pressing as I'm doing these things. I'm holding down Control as I'm holding down Shift in order to make that move, horizontal move. I can push it so close to the other line, like that. Left, right, left, and right, and left, and right. Okay, now we got this side, so we can extend it. Oh, by the way, I always forgot that there's also this square selection tool. It's basically when you're using the texture selection tool, you can just click and drag, you make a square and select whatever is within. It's the same as the lasso tool, except that you're making squares instead of free shape. So we got that. Rarely preferable though, most of the case that it wouldn't work. And then I'm gonna do this side. Squish as close as possible. The closer it is, the more sharp it's gonna be. Left, right. So a little bit of a reminder on the theory is that whatever you see here, like this line, this outline right here, this edge that we're working on, it's basically controlled by 3 dots. So these 3 dots only matter, together they only matter this part. But since this dot is also connected to this and this, so here we got 1, 2, 3 for this part, and we got 1, 2, and 3 for this part. That's the basis of all texture transformation when you're using triangle. And if you don't have a triangle, it would assume a triangle for you and work it that way. So either way, it's always going to be triangle. So remember, whenever you move something in Live2D, when you're moving these dots, always be aware that there are 3 factors doing the same thing that you want. No matter how you want this texture to, like this angle to go over here, you can always have 3 ways to do it. You can do this, you can do this, or you can do this. Ultimately, you would need the balance of all 3 in order to maintain a good shape, because as you move this, you're also moving everything else. So there's a sort of like a ripple effect every time you want to move things. It sounds tedious, but you get used to it. And you have to do it all the time, at least for this Cubism 2.1, because I get a feeling that as they develop 3.0 and the later versions, there might be better ways to do things. I feel like they would go for it. So I'm gonna reposition in a better spot, and I guess I can just match this end and pull this end. Well, if I match this end and pull the other end, the hidden effect is that there's no stretching over here at all, but there's a lot of stretching in this part. Not the end of it, but in between this and this part. But I guess since it's a black square, it wouldn't matter. Well, it does matter a little bit if I in the next lesson, but we'll talk about it later. There. So as you can see, I move from black square from here to here and down to here. 1, 2, 3. I zoom in and look. As it moves downwards, the edge is still sharp. Sharp edge. Perfect. Nice. Alright. So that's all for this lesson. If you want to review anything, just look at the workflow episode. Alright?